Good evening, everyone. I'm Karen Sander, the Director of Public Programs here at the Graduate Center. Welcome. We are so pleased to be collaborating with our colleagues at PEN America on tonight's event with these two extraordinary authors. The CUNY Graduate Center is an ideal location for tonight's conversation. We are renowned for our incredibly diverse student body, and throughout our history, CUNY has provided access to higher education to immigrants and their children. Today, the Graduate Center educates students from nearly 80 countries in our master's and PhD programs here. The Graduate Center is also renowned for our scholarship and research on immigration, the Caribbean, Latin America, women's studies, poetry, comparative literature, among many other topics. And at the Graduate Center, we like to show that knowledge is for the public good. And we are very proud to present a diverse array of public programs that put you at the center of the most important conversations of our time. That is certainly true of our program tonight, and we hope you will come back often. It is my pleasure now to introduce Lily Philpott, the Manager of Public Programs for PEN America. Thank you.
Good evening. Hi, everyone. It's a real honor to be here to welcome these two incredible women and all of you. As Karen mentioned, my name is Lily Philpott, and I'm the Public Programs Manager at PEN. I want to begin by paying our respects to the Lenape people, past, present, and future, and acknowledging that we are gathered on their land this evening. Tonight's event is part of PEN America's PEN Out Loud series, which we present year-round in partnership with the incredible Strand Bookstore. We're thrilled to be at CUNY this evening, and I want to extend our thanks to Karen Sander and the rest of the CUNY team. We also want to thank the Strand Bookstore, in particular Lee, Sabir, and Nicholas, who are here this evening. The Strand is here outside. I hope you have a chance to buy a book and get it signed after the event. If you're not familiar with PEN America, our mission is to celebrate and defend free and open expression at home and abroad. We do so through wide-ranging advocacy efforts, as well as public events like this one, which celebrate the breadth and power of story and the literature that free expression makes possible. PEN America is a membership organization. If you are a writer, a reader, an editor, a journalist, a translator, a student, a teacher, or more, you are eligible for PEN membership, and I hope that you'll speak with my colleagues out in the lobby to join us. I also want to make sure that you're aware of the World Voices Festival, which will take place from May 6th through 12th across New York City with authors including Arundhati Roy, Sonia Sanchez, Marlon James, and many more. Tickets for the festival are on sale now, and you can find them on our website and more about our work at pen.org. Finally, before I introduce our authors, I want to thank the following organizations who are here with us this evening. I hope you'll stop by their tables in the lobby to learn more about their work. So thank you to the Dominican Writers Association, Latinx in Publishing. Thank you to Latinx in Publishing, the Bronx Book Festival, and La Pluma y la Tinta. Thank you all. And now it is my honor to introduce the women to my left. Elizabeth Acevedo is the New York Times bestselling author of The Poet X, which won the 2018 National Book Award for Young People's Literature. It also won the Prince Award for Excellence in Young Adult Fiction and the Puro Belpre Award for a work that best affirms the Latinx cultural experience. She is also the author of the forthcoming novel With the Fire on High, which is out this May. Julia Alvarez is the author of multiple novels, including How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accents, Yo, and of course, In the Time of the Butterflies, which we are celebrating this evening. This year is the 25th anniversary of its publication. She is also the author of the poetry collections The Woman I Kept to Myself and Homecoming. She has won numerous awards, and she was recognized with the National Medal of the Arts in 2013 for her extraordinary storytelling and work that reveals the human capacity of her strength in the face of oppression. Please join me in welcoming Elizabeth and Julia.
Sequence? Okay. This is wonderful. Thank you for coming. It's extraordinary to be here. I just learned about Elizabeth Acevedo, reading a review. And of course, I went and got the Poet X and then fell in love with the work and got copies for all the primos and the cousins. And anyhow, everybody's in love with her. And wonderful to be here. So I want to thank Penn out loud for having us here. My wonderful publisher, Algonquin. We've been together from the beginning. It's wonderful that a publisher stands by a book. 25 years is a long time in publishing. I was joking that, you know how they say that a year in a dog's life is worth 7 in a human year, 7 human years, and a book that is alive a year or 2 or 3 or 4, it's like 100 years old. So the things last in this publishing times that are hard for publishers. It's wonderful, so I'm very appreciative. Thinking a lot about the people who helped me along the way, my editor, Shannon Ravenel back then, my wonderful agents, Stuart and Susan, both with me from Susan from the very beginning, and of course, to be here with Elizabeth, this is wonderful. But most of all, you readers, who have been the ones that keep the novel alive. So I'm very grateful. 25 years, you know, I'm getting older, but it's something when you realize even your books are getting older. So I've used up my 3 minutes of reading time. And they just wanted us to give you a short piece to kind of introduce the work. So I'm trying to find something that I didn't have to get set up a whole lot because that takes a lot of time. And so I found this short 2-page passage in which they, the surviving sister, it's now 1994, many years have passed since the murder of her sisters, and she always gets invited to these receptions when November 25th, the day of their murder, International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, she always has to go and be a social animal, which it's a little bit the way I feel when this novel gets celebrated, because as I was looking for a passage, I realized it's about a really gruesome and terrible event that is still with us, this kind of violence. And so to feel celebratory about a novel that is dealing with that, it makes a bond between me and they. So I thought this passage where she goes to a reception and she runs into somebody she knew from the underground, Leo, and it was someone that she had a crush on, and he was a rebel. But she ended up making a safer choice of marrying Jaimito. And by this time in the scene, they've already been divorced. So here goes. Not long ago, I met Leo at a reception in honor of the girls. Despite what Minu thinks, I don't like these things, but I always make myself go. Only if I know he will be there, I won't go. I mean our current president, who was the puppet president the day the girls were killed. Ay, acquaintances will sometimes try to convince me. Put that behind you. He's an old blind man now. He was blind when he could see, I'll snap. Oh, but my blood turns just thinking of shaking that spotted hand. But most things I go to, for the girls, I always tell myself. Sometimes I allow myself a shot of rum before climbing into the car. Not enough to scent the slightest scandal, just a little thunder in the heart. People will be asking things, well-meaning, but nevertheless poking their fingers where it still hurts. People who kept their mouths shut when a little peep from everyone would have been a chorus the world couldn't have ignored. People who once were friends of the devil. Everyone got amnesty by telling on everyone else until we were all one big, rotten family of cowards. So I allow myself my shot of rum. At these things, I always try to position myself near the door so I can leave early. And there I was, about to slip away, when an older man approached me. On his arm was a handsome woman with an open, friendly face. This old fool is no fool, I'm thinking. He has got himself his young nurse wife for his old age. I put out my hand, just a reception line habit, I guess. And this man reaches out both hands and clasps mine. Dede, caramba, don't you know who I am? He holds on tight, and the young woman is beaming beside him. I look again. Dios santo, Leo. And suddenly I have to sit down. The wife gets us both drinks and leaves us alone. We catch up, back and forth. My children, his children, the insurance business, his practice in the Capitol, the old house I still live in, his new house near the old presidential palace. Slowly, we are working our way towards that treacherous path, the horrible crime, the waste of young lives, the throbbing heart of the wound. Ay, Leo, I say when we get to that part. And bless his heart, he takes my hands and says, the nightmare is over, Dede. Look at what the girls have done. He gestures expansively. He means the free elections, bad presidents now put in power properly, not by army tanks. He means our country beginning to prosper, free zones going up everywhere, the coast a clutter of clubs and resorts. We are now the playground of the Caribbean, who were once its killing fields. The cemetery is beginning to flower. Ay, Leo, I say it again. I follow his gaze around the room. Most of the guests here are young. The boy businessmen with computerized watches and walkie-talkies in their wives' purses to summon the chauffeur from the car. Their glamorous young wives with degrees they do not use, the scent of perfume, the tinkle of keys to the things they own. Oh, yes, I hear one of the women say, we spent a revolution there. I can see them glancing at us, the two old ones. How sweet they look under that painting of Bidot. To them, we are characters in a sad story about a past that is over. All the way home, I am trembling. I am not sure why. It comes to me slowly as I head north through the dark countryside. The only lights are up in the mountains where the prosperous young are building their getaway houses. And of course in the sky, all the splurged wattage of the stars. Leo is right. The nightmare is over. We are free at last. But the one thing that is making me tremble that I do not want to say out loud, and I'll say it once only, and it's done. Was it for this, the sacrifice of the butterflies? Thank you.
Good evening. Yes, one person in the audience. I appreciate you. It is an incredible honor to be here tonight. I have been on tour since early February. I have 50 events in 3 months. This is my 25th. When Pen America reached out, I was like, I cannot add another event. And then I saw who it was with and was like, clear my schedule. I am there. And I think it says something amazing that a reader could be up here. And usually when I'm set to read, I'm running things in my head. And I was just enchanted. I think every time I read your work, I'm enchanted. And so thank you for everything you've done, for carving a path. We're going to talk in a bit, but I just want to take this moment to say it is quite an honor. I'm going to read from early on in The Poet X. The novel is a coming-of-age story about a Dominican-American secret poet who is trying to figure out how to walk through the world with a body that is hyper-visible and a personality and all these thoughts that no one cares about. And these are just the first early pages where you are dropped into her poetry journal. I am unhideable, taller than even my father, with what mommy has always said was a little too much body for such a young girl. I'm the baby fat that settled into D cups and swinging hips, so that the boys who called me a whale in middle school now ask me to send them pictures of myself in a thong. The other girls call me conceited, hoe, thought, fast. When your body takes up more room than your voice, you are always the target of well-aimed rumors, which is why I let my knuckles talk for me, which is why I learned to shrug when my name was replaced by insults. I have forced my skin just as thick as I am. Mira, muchacha is mommy's favorite way to start a sentence. And I know I've already done something wrong when she hits me with that, look, girl. This time it's, mira, muchacha. Marina from across the street told me you were on the stoop again, talking to los vendedores. Like usual, I bite my tongue and don't correct her because I hadn't been talking to the drug dealers. They'd been talking to me, but she said she doesn't want any conversation between me and those boys, or any boys at all. And she better not hear about me hanging out like a wet shirt on a clothesline, just waiting to be worn, or she would go ahead and be the one to wring my neck. Oíste? She asks, but walks away before I can answer. Sometimes I want to tell her, the only person in this house who isn't heard is me. I'm the only one in the family without a biblical name. Shit, Xiomara isn't even Dominican. I know because I Googled it. It means one who is ready for war. And truth be told, that description is about right because I even tried to come into the world in a fighting stance, feet first, had to be cut out of mommy after she'd given birth to my twin brother Xavier just fine. And my name labors out of some people's mouths in that same awkward and painful way until I have to slowly say, Xiomara. I've learned not to flinch the first day of school as teachers get stuck stupid trying to figure it out. Mommy says she thought it was a saint's name, gave me this gift of battle, and now curses how well I live up to it. My parents probably wanted a girl who would sit in the pews wearing pretty florals and a soft smile. They got combat boots and a mouth that's silent until it's sharp as an island machete. Pero tú no eres fácil is a phrase I've heard my whole life. When I come home with my knuckles scraped up, pero tú no eres fácil. When I don't wash the dishes quickly enough, or I forget to scrub the tub, pero tú no eres fácil. Sometimes it's a good thing. When I do well on an exam, or the rare time I get an award, pero tú no eres fácil. When my mother's pregnancy was difficult, and it was all because of me, because I was turned around and they thought that I would die, or worse, that I would kill her. So they held a prayer circle at church, and even Father Sean showed up to the emergency room. Father Sean, who held my mother's hand as she labored me into the world, and Papi paced behind the doctor, who said this was the most difficult birth she had ever been a part of. But instead of dying, I came out wailing, waving my tiny fist, and the first thing Papi said, the first words I ever heard, pero tú no eres fácil. You sure ain't an easy one. I want to start off by telling Julia a secret. And telling you all a secret. In 2016, right after I learned that my novel would be published, I wrote a letter to Julia Alvarez. It was this long 2-page letter, and I remember that it started with the first Christmas gift I ever bought my mother was in the name of Salome. Wow. In Spanish, in a little bookstore on 14th Street that used to have translated literature. Wow. And I bought myself the same copy in English. Wow. And it was the first book we both ever read together. And my mother does not read fiction. And so this was a huge deal. Wow. And I wrote you this long letter that I never sent.
Why? You
because blurb requests are awkward. And I had all of these things to say, and I realized this is not the moment. There will be a moment. I don't know if this is it.
Thank you.
But I say that to I guess to pay homage of the many ways that literature can exist, not just in one person, but in a community, right? In a family, as a way of a touchstone. That for me, your literature was a way to be like, I'm not just the gringuita cousin.
Yeah.
Right? That I have a connection here that I can explore through this work. Wow. And that also makes me a better sense of myself, of my mother, of my family, of the women I come from, right through this text that affirms that. Yeah. And I want to start by just a very basic question of thinking of origins as writers. How did you know this was your path? When did storyteller enter into your life? And did you know that this is the impact you were going to make?
Whoa. It's like the rest of the conversation.
And go. Any one of those will work. Yeah.
Well, I didn't come from a reading family, and in the DR, especially when I was growing up in the 50s, it wasn't, an open culture. It was an oral culture, though, a storytelling culture. Mm-hmm. So I hated school. Kids love hearing this. I flunked every grade through 5th grade. I had to go to summer school every summer so that they would pass me to the next grade. I hated school. And
No me diga.
no, I was not.
Now we're getting secrets.
No, I wasn't into writing, but my auntie, that was the one reader in the family, gave me the story of the Arabian Nights. And this story did an amazing job in my head, but I didn't know it in a conscious way, of a young girl that tells stories and saves her life and the life of all the women in the kingdom and transforms the Sultan. I mean, it was across the board. And it put a little seed in my head, the stories have power, that they can transform you and save you and your community. So that was in my head. When we came to the United States as a 10-year-old, that's when I started to be a reader, when I was learning English, because suddenly we were in a culture that was very unfriendly and rejecting, and I had to go into the interior, go into myself instead of having that community, la familia, all of that. And so I started reading. And when you become a reader, after a certain point you realize there's only one story you're not hearing around the circle, the one that only you can tell. Right. But that was like, I was 13, 14. I wanted to be a storyteller. I wanted to be a writer. But back then, multicultural literature, even women's studies, African-American literature, hadn't been invented. Right. So I thought this was not something that was possible for me, that we could do. Right. So it was a long path. Garcia Girls was published when I was 41, but I've been writing already for over 30 years. It was, well, a little less than 30, but it was a long haul. Susan, who's sitting there, Sandra Cisneros' agent, Denise Chavez, Ana Castillo, she was knocking on publishers' doors when we were sociology. The stories we told were sociology, if at all. Right. They were not American literature. And we have lived to see the transformation of that. That's why it's so moving to see this new, young, vibrant, talented, that is coming on force and being part of the literature of this country. And it's here, and it's a done deal. And it's the vibrancy now in American literature, these voices that are coming from different places. Yeah. So tell me about how you got started.
I think similarly, right? I come from oral storytellers. Both my parents are here, and I don't know if they would.
Where are they?
Ahí mismo.
¿Dónde?
In the front. El don y la doña.
Hey. Qué orgullo, ¿eh? Qué orgullo. Qué bueno. Ay, sí, qué grande.
They're so cute. That's my street team. They walk around with newspaper articles throughout the whole neighborhood and hand sell my books. I love them. Gangster, if you need a bodega book, they got you.
Forget social media.
We don't need social media.
Social media.
I got my street team right
you got
there.
your street people.
But I don't know that they would call themselves storytellers, but once I acquired the language for, I grew up a voracious reader, but clearly not seeing certain stories in books. But it wasn't because people in my family were voracious readers.
Yeah.
But there was this inclination towards telling the stories, right? My dad would come from outside from the barber shop and have these long jokes he wanted to tell with this perfect timing, right? They were always inappropriate, but mad funny. My mother would tell me all these cuentos about El Campo, that I didn't grow up with a lot of Disney, right?
Yeah.
My best friend was, in her house was where I first saw Cinderella and Snow White at like 16.
Yeah.
I grew up with 2 Disney movies, but I grew up with my mother's fairy tales, all these cuentos, right, of being in El Campo and how she used to ride her father's yegua, esto y lo otro, things that to me felt so foreign because I could not imagine riding a mare or like being fed 15 kids off one plátano. She would tell me these things, I'm like, ¿qué? No me diga.
Yeah.
So to me, it was fantastical.
Yeah.
But I think she was trying to impart this, this is who we are.
Yeah.
This is where we are from. And it was really hip hop where I first saw the stories that felt like home, and I wanted to be a rapper. I didn't know any authors. I didn't know any poets. I didn't know this. But I knew rap, and I knew that rap knew me.
Yeah.
And so early on, that was a direction that I went in. And it wasn't until I got to high school and met other poets and saw different styles and got a sense of the breadth of poetry and that I could be a part of that I was speaking back to a literary form, that I maybe that kernel of, wait, I could write something. I don't just have to be there to perform it. It doesn't just have to be carried in my body. I could maybe put something into the
Generate it.
world.
Yeah.
Like
That's
the
great.
text could speak.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
I would be remiss if we didn't ask about In the Time of the Butterflies.
Yeah.
I think that this 25th anniversary is huge. I think it's huge for those of us who grew up with this book and were like, this speaks to me and who I am, and then to realize, oh wait, the rest of the world is also like in on this? Like the stories that we heard, but now they're reading it and watching it and embracing this. Tell me about what it feels like to look at the 25 years of the life of a book and to think about, what did you set out to do when you first wrote that? Like, what was your, what hit you that you were like, I need to tell this story, especially knowing that you were going to be pigeonholed in terms of genre and in terms of audience and perhaps in terms of publishing?
Well, you know, pigeonholing wasn't even a concept back then because it was just, you know, it sort of, there wasn't even a literature yet that, it hadn't yet built into a kind of a literature, Latinx writers or anything like that. It was just, you know, I knew Sandra, I knew Anna, I knew a few other writers, and we connected with each other, but it wasn't out there. But so in terms of writing the book, I don't think it began with any concept of anything huge. It was just Garcia Girls, the first one, was an immigration story from the point of view of females, and we were, my sisters and myself were the sisters that had made it. And I knew, since we got to this country, and Papi told me the stories, because he was in the underground movement too of the Mirabar sisters, I was haunted by them because they were the sisters that hadn't made it. Yeah. And so there were 4 of them, we were 4. One of them survived to tell the story, the second one. I'm the second one, the storyteller. And it just felt like, after Garcia Girls, this was the book that I needed to write to kind of, Pay a Debt makes it sound like very righteous, but I needed to, somehow I needed to understand what had happened there and to understand my parents' generation that are known as La Generación Perdida, you know, the ones that were under the Trujillo dictatorship, 31 years. And so it was a way for me to understand my parents' generation, to try to go back inside the entrails of the dictatorship. And also I had read about the dictatorship, but always from the male point of view. And the dictatorship was so predatory of females. We know about Trujillo.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Trujillo, any
You
man,
saw your daughter and
oh boy.
that was it.
Yep, you couldn't, parents didn't let their girls go out in public because that was, you know, he had pimps pimping for him, and it was So it was very predatory. And so I wondered what had mobilized these young women that started the underground. And what was the what was the bodily and female experience of dictatorship? How did that manifest itself, you know? And for each sister, it's different. But I had no idea. And then we were talking in the green room about the horrible review it got in the New York Times book review. It was like, yes.
They get it wrong sometimes.
No, but you got a good one, honey. You got a good one.
Well, they learned not to mess with Dominican writers. After you, they were like, no, can't do it again, right? Because that reviewer had to bite their tongue after they realized, maybe I got it wrong.
I don't know. But, you know, part of it was, you know, when are people going to write great, important novels instead about, you know, these women things and, you know, heartaches and and I thought, you know, oh boy, you know, I had so little faith in myself that I thought, you know, is it true? Yeah. But I had my supporters who kept, you know, animándome, as they say. And so it was important to find that community that I found of readers and supporters. And so now, 25 years later, I wish that you say, what could I say to myself back then? Muchacha, it'll pass. Tú sabes, this is, just keep doing, and that's what you do. Spike Lee said the only way to be flash-proof is to keep doing your work. You know, you just, you do the thing because it's your calling, it's what you feel like you're put on this earth to do, and you do it, and sometimes you look up and the faces are going like this and the thumbs, but you keep doing it because you don't know what else to do, you know. Right. And so you keep telling the stories. And so it feels kind of vindicating, but I'm thinking about the book that I'm trying to write now that's giving me a hard time, you know. Each time you start a book, you start over. And it doesn't care that you wrote In the Time of the Butterflies. You have to write this book to stop it. It doesn't care.
I have no respect these books. Son malcriado.
Malcriado books. So what do they care, you know?
No, I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. I think that is really helpful. My second book is coming out in a bit, and I've been so nervous.
Really?
That's kind. I think just that moment of a thing I created mostly in secret, without any expectation for who was going to read it, without knowing if there would be an audience, with this immense fear of what if I don't get it right? What if my community feels like, no, eso no es, right? What if I didn't do the job?
Yeah.
And then it got received so well, this amazing reception, and the next thing is supposed to come forth, and I'm like, wait, give it back. Like, if I knew when that book was ready to come out that this was going to happen, I don't know if I could have put it into the world. There's so much fear I have now. But to hear
achievement, almost like it makes it hard to get a great.
It's going to be compared, right? There's always this comparison now.
See,
and so what you just said of like you got to put blinders on has been something I'm trying to remind myself.
And also to remember that you're not writing the books for, you know, it's not about writing the books for, I know that we need readers and we need the books to get out there and they need to be sold, but you can't write by polls or the winds. You know, you have to be, you know, surrender to the book. And like we were saying, it doesn't care that you did it before. You have to put in the work. Yeah. And I think the best way to be kind of honor your readers is to grow as a writer. Right. Not to repeat the tricks that worked last time. Right. You know, because then you're just a formula and a brand.
And readers think they want the same thing.
No.
Sometimes they're like, I want this character, now I want this. And I'm like, you don't know what you want. I haven't written it yet.
Yeah.
Like, no, like I'm sure that folks came to me and they're like, actually, this
when
is
are you
it now.
When are you going to write another book like In the Time of the Butterflies?
Right.
Well, I can't do that. I wouldn't be growing as a writer, you know? Yeah. And that's what's important, because that's what I signed up for, you know, to grow and keep pushing the envelope. And sometimes I'll fail. And I think it's wonderful when you have a publisher that will stick with you through your growing pains to the next and next and next stage. Right.
Which I think is remarkable. I mean, I have an editor who's been in the business for over 25 years.
Wow.
And I had several folks who I was in communication with before the book was sold, and the thing that got me with this editor is she was very clear, I'm here for the long haul. I'm not buying this book. I am investing in your career. And so whatever you want to do and explore, you're allowed to do. But I think that's uncommon these days. And even some of the editors I spoke to were like, oh, I like this Latin spice. Like that was, they were drawn to this almost
that's so dangerous.
Trend of multiculturalism, as opposed to, we are trying to tell stories that are not necessarily slice of life, that are not necessarily just honing in on, right? And I guess it's just, I'm thinking of the relationship you had with your editor, and do you feel like you were able to just be ushered in to explore, to experiment, because there were less eyes, because people were focused on a career versus a book?
And because, you know, when that happens with an editor or publisher, there's even if they don't, you know, if they feel critical about a book or something you've written, or it needs a lot of revision, there's a rock bottom faith that you know that they have stuck with you and they believe in you as a writer. And in a way, it's, you know, a vote of faith, because they believe you can, they also keep pushing you and making you grow as a writer. But it is important, and it's so easy to get branded and marketed and become, you know, like you say, the Latin flavor or something. And you have, you know, it's not about that, and it's difficult. And so the only thing is to be true to the work and the characters and put in the long hours. And sometimes it'll work, and sometimes, it might not, you know, but you keep doing the work. Yep.
You all thought you were coming to an in-conversation, but really it's just a master class. And I'm just like going to ask all the things I need to know.
And please, I don't want to turn into la viejita con todos los consejos.
No.
And
I've been waiting my whole life to have this conversation, so you're not going to take it away from me.
No. Yeah. But anyhow, where were we? Well, and, you know, part of the thing that has happened with writing Butterflies and so on is that I think the other thing that Butterflies did is that it politicized me about learning the history of our country, or origin countries of our parents. And, you know, it's sort of, you know, when you write about that kind of material, it becomes important, you know, Scheherazade is the model, right? She's an activist. Activism and storytelling are bound in her story. And so the idea that, you know, that in a way, in the time of the Butterflies has, you know, politicized me. And, you know, I just wanted a little quiet Emily Dickinson life writing my work. And all of a sudden, you know, I was called on to be part of a larger activism than just storytelling. And it's always a hard balance, because I feel most comfortable on the page. But that intersection of how our work can, you know, affect and make change happen, it also interests me. I don't have any answers. It's a compelling question for me. Yeah.
How, and it's going to be a little bit of craft and a little bit of not craft, in terms of when you sit down at the page and you are writing, how much is your editor brain or the part of you that is critical thinking of politics? And especially in climates like the ones we're in now, right?
Yeah.
Where I think there is an attack on women, there's an attack on immigrants, there's an attack on people of color, on black folks. Like, what is the role of the writer to say, this story may not have this bent, but I'm going to add it in because I think we need to say this? Or is the role of the writer to realize that as we consume and take in, it's going to come out and those themes are there? Like, how do you approach, I mean, in climates of tension, writing towards or in response to the current events, the current moment?
Well, it depends on what I'm writing, because I can write an essay, you know, that is responding to a current issue. I also find that with poetry, many times I can address an issue through a poem. But I think when I'm writing a novel, I have to be true to the characters, even if their politics or opinions are deplorable. I can't airbrush them in order to make it palatable.
Yeah.
I have to be true to the characters and true to the story. And I agree with you. Being aware of my own times, being concientizada enough, it comes through in the prose and the approach and the strategies without you having to be a preacher or to subvert your character to become an instrument of, because then you're colonizing your characters. It's more, you are.
Say it again.
You're not letting them be who they are. Whew. And they have to be complicated and sometimes
and human.
disappointing.
Right.
Yeah. But that's hard because we were talking about this too. When you're writing and you make a character and your family or your community looks at it and says, pero, you want to write down that? What people already have enough problems with Dominicans, and they're going to read that and say, yeah, tú ves. I mean, look, these people. So, or people, o qué van a decir la gente if you write something like that down.
Say it again.
Ay, pero qué vergüenza, la familia.
Yeah.
And you have to tell the story.
Right.
That is the story.
Right.
Because that's what the storyteller does.
Right.
Not to, to open the heart and expand the mind, but
But to tell the truth.
but to tell the truth.
And I think a lot of
Yeah.
us want to dress the truth up, especially when we feel like we don't have a lot of our stories in the world.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, let me not talk about leaning on
Esto y
rice.
lo
Let
otro.
me not talk about, this father who maybe is there but is also absent.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
he's
yeah, yeah.
physically there, but is he going to parent-teacher
Yeah.
conference? Is he
Yeah.
showing up, right? Because we already
Yeah.
have these stereotypes within our
Sí,
community
yeah,
that
yeah.
we're trying to avoid. But if that is the truth, like you have to
Yeah.
look at it in the face, right?
Yeah.
But it's hard
Yeah.
because I get
And
a lot of mail and messages and comments that I don't read anymore.
Sí.
Where folks are questioning whether or not I am a real Dominican,
I
whether
see.
I am writing, no, it's because you're American. It's because you have these liberal ideas. It's because you never lived here. Like, you don't know the truth of
Yeah.
being what you are.
Yeah.
You're not this.
Yeah, yeah.
And that at first, when I began writing, felt like, oh, maybe I'm lying.
Yeah.
Maybe what I lived is not the truth. Maybe I have to backtrack and be silent and let someone else tell the truth of who
Yeah,
we are.
yeah.
As opposed to, there's not a single story.
There's the danger of a single
Right,
story.
right.
Adichie.
Chimamanda said it, right? Like, there's not a single story.
There's not a single story. I mean, I've talked to Edwidge Danticat, our wonderful on the other side of the island.
Breath, Eyes,
Yeah.
Memory.
And
Yes.
when she published Breath, Eyes, and Memory, her community, Haitian community, really came down on her because they said they have enough problems with Haitians,
Right.
and now you're going to write about
These inter things that is like,
yes, that are negative. There's gonna.
Eso de la casa, that's not for out there.
See, that's gonna give them ammunition. And she said it was a process of trying to be aware. The thing is, not to airbrush it, but to be aware. What you said earlier, a certain level of awareness gets in the writing, and part of it was that it surprised her because she just thought she was telling the truth. But she was not aware of the more complex things set in motion by a community that was so oppressed. And I think her writing has gotten bigger and better because of that concientización about her community too. So I think it's always a learning curve
Yeah.
when you're a writer, when you're a human
always
being.
learning.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love that. Julia, I think we're going to move to a Q&A. And I want to end on this idea, right? Like that we're always learning, we're always moving forward.
Yeah.
We have an opportunity for some folks to ask questions. There are mics on the side. And so we're going to ask you to line up. There's a mic over here. There's a mic over here. We have approximately 10 minutes.
Wow, look at them. Usually
In
everybody's
an orderly
so shy.
fashion.
Not this crowd. No.
And we will start with the hands up.
Hey.
Yes.
I'm a teacher. I know about hands up.
There we go.
Hey, great.
Hola, gracias por estar aquí. Thank you for being here. First, I want to say, I wasn't expecting to go first. Julia, you are not going to remember my friend. Párate.
Oh my gosh.
Maria and Ruby, we went to Middlebury College. You were our
Of
professor.
course. Oh my
And the Middlebury College, Vermont, very white back then. And we were 3 Dominicans in Middlebury College. 1, 2, 3.
No, wait. Do you remember the flan that I would always bring to Alianza meeting?
Sí, señora.
Sí.
Sí, señora.
Let's give credit where credit is
Let's
due.
say yes. Let's say yes. But I want to credit you because similar to what Liz was saying about, man, Dominican exists. Somebody can hear my voice in your story, and we always share that. And I think you empowered me to be all that I am to a degree. My parents also had a lot to do with that. You know, cuando mami dice, mira muchacha, ten cuidado. It's like, oh, sorry. But anyway, so I just want to say I'm a teacher to both of you. Liz, I want to say thank you to you because Monday mornings, we listen to your poetry. And my students are encouraged to respond to you. We never share the letters because, you know, similar to why you didn't send your letter.
But she didn't send hers.
Huh?
She didn't send her
I know,
letter.
that's why. And now I have to tell my kids, Liz dijo que se la mande. Que ya va a leer all 150 of them. But it is how authentic you come across and the fire that comes through your voice and your attitude and your fullness of self that I want to instill with my students. So for both of you, my question is the following, and I have to record it so I can, my kids can hear it. And I'm from Florida, and I flew here first. It's my friend's birthday. My friend's birthday.
Oh my God.
So, sorry, I'm almost done. Anyways, so I came to bring her to you.
Ay, feliz cumpleaños.
So, my question is, I'm done, I almost done. My question is, what advice would you give a young writer, estamos en primo, aquí toditos somos primos. What advice would you give a young writer? I have a lot of writers, my daughter and her daughter, who both say, I'm not good enough. Oh my gosh, that sucks. Don't read it out loud. I don't have anything to say. And it's so hard to push them through, because they say, well, you're my teacher. You're supposed to say that. So I wanna encourage them through your voice. What advice would you give to those, I'm going to call them closeted writers, fearful writers who are, who don't hear their voice, don't see the value in their voice, or who are afraid? And thank you so much.
She's closer to young writer than I am at this stage. Let Elizabeth take it first.
I mean, I work with a lot of young people and I lead a lot of workshops, and oftentimes young people are afraid of their own voice. They've been told that they have nothing to say, they haven't lived any experiences, what could they possibly have to write about, right? And then the moment that I ask them, tell me a truth that you know, or what's a secret you've never told your mother, or like if you could write an apology letter that you should have received, what would you say? Like the moment that you flip the questions towards interiority and you honor that they have experiences, it flips. Because oftentimes young writers think everything has to be about love and peace and war and these abstract concepts. But if we just bring it home to what is a human experience that you have had, right? And how do you use the least amount of words as possible to get that across? That all of a sudden that opens things up for them. And so I think it's often not the material, it's the question. You can't tell someone, here, write me a book, right? You have to ask them the targeted questions that make them realize they have the material with which to write. Thank you for that. We have like 7 minutes, and so I want to make sure that we get folks up here. Have your question ready. Make sure it is a question, right? That was a great way to start us off because I do want to pay honor to the young sis who it's your birthday.
Yes.
Dale.
So real quick, I just want to thank Julia Alvarez because I remember coming here when I was 5 and being in 3rd grade and nobody knew what a Dominican Republic was and what a Dominican was and feeling like I didn't know where I came from. And then I remember being in 3rd grade and seeing how the Garcia girls lost their accent and reading Dominican Republic in a page for the first time at like 8 years old. It meant a lot to me. And also just telling the story of our heroes. We always hear about these European heroes. So to hear about a Dominican hero, it meant a lot to me. So I just want to say that. And also I love your hair. But this is my question, and it's for both of you. How did your own process with assimilation in the United States as a Dominican immigrant or a Dominican American influence your writing? I know, I'm sorry. Tense.
How many minutes?
Right.
I think it would be interesting. And it would be interesting because we represent such a different immigration story, you
Right.
know? 1960, the dictatorship, coming as basically political refugees when not that many people were getting out.
Yeah.
Very different experience from being born of Dominican parents.
In a Dominican community.
In a Dominican community.
Where we had access to our food and our music and that there was an in-betweenness.
Yes.
I never felt Dominican enough or American enough, but it was less of an assimilation in any one direction or more of a, I don't belong, I don't know where my home is, I don't know what home claims me.
Yeah.
More importantly, I know who I claim,
Yeah.
I don't know if I am claimed by. And that's, I think, a slightly different approach than you knew who you were from and who you were of. And
No, because once we were here, first of all, when we came, there weren't that many Dominicans. Now there's so many Dominicans in Nueva York. There weren't that many Dominicans, and we could not go back, so that wasn't home. And we didn't really belong here, and it wasn't a very kind reception. You know, it was go back to where you came from. And so it was, again, and I think we find the stories and the writing because this is really the homeland, you know, inside these stories and inside the writing. So I think it might be the reason or one of the compelling reasons that you go to writing, you know, or why I did, and to reading, to belong.
Okay. Well, thank you to both of you for giving validation to our stories. Just want to say that real quick.
Thank you.
So, firstly, thank you to both of you for writing. When the Poet X got the prints, I was watching the awards from my work computer, and I was very hype because usually,
as was I.
I can only imagine. Because usually the books that when I read the books that win the prints, I'm like, But I love the Poet X. And I love how the Garcia girls lost their accent because I'm also a Garcia girl, even though I was born in New York, but you know my last name's Garcia. Although I like to joke that everyone's last name's Garcia. But my question is, one thing that I kind of sometimes struggle with in my writing is how much Spanish I put in the text without translating, or like without giving context within the text, or even like if I write like a character, for example, if I write a character based on my mother or my parents with like their limited English or their like not great English or great English or whatever, I mean, both English and Spanish were forced on us, but that's another conversation for another day. But like when I write, I guess my question is like writing about like those things without making them caricatures. Because I'm like, if I'm writing a character based on my mom and the way my mom speaks English, like I want to honor my mother and the way she talks English, and you know my Spanish without making my family or my country, my culture a caricature. And it's just something I've been thinking about a lot.
Julia, I have a thought on this, but if you...
Go ahead. And then I was thinking as she was, good question.
I think this is often a question of audience.
Who are you assuming is a person that's going to read this, right? That I knew coming in, I am not going to italicize any Spanish in my novel. And like that was a question that I was particular about asking editors, like what is the house standard and are you willing to change that? Particularly in children's literature, there's still very standard rules. Poetry is a little different. I think folks are more progressive, but I am not assuming that the people reading this book do not speak Spanish. So there should be no reason why there should be this marker of this word is different.
It's
right?
not even about italicizing. Like, I don't, like, that's not my...
But I guess what I mean is more that it's the question of, I am not walking into this assuming that the folks don't have context. That I walk in knowing that I write to and towards young black and brown women who I trust if they don't know the work, they will do the work. That I think Google is accessible. I think people do research, and I'm trying to say, like, there are so many texts I had to read that I loved that made me work really hard to figure things out, that made me work like, what is this? I don't know what an Ozarks is. I don't know what this like trail is. I don't know what, but I want to do the research so that I can access this. And if someone doesn't, they're not your reader, and that's okay. You know, like, I'm not here to like grant permission or to say anything. I think you already know what you want to write and how you want to write it, and you honor the voice. Yeah. First and foremost, the thing that I think makes any book distinct from another is voice. And that comes through the way that you are translating yourself onto the page, and you can't be thinking about context or is it too much? We're always asking ourselves, are we too much?
Yeah, and you know what? You like, as Elizabeth says, if you read a Shakespeare play, there's like 7 footnotes, because you have to find out what, you know. So yes, there is pushing your reader, but I think you're also asking a question about how do you not make someone sound silly or uneducated, or, you know, because they're not speaking correct, whatever. And I think that question of audience is really important. And I think if you as the writer respect your characters, doesn't have to be that you even like them sometimes in their behavior, but if you respect them, it gets in the writing.
If you make them human.
That conveys itself to your reader.
That you can't make them just one way, right? Like that if it's a question of, I'm not sure if they're gonna come across as too ignorant, you show the way they have intelligence in other ways. That's not in the speech, that's in how they move through the world, that's in how they keep the house, that is how they, right? Like you demonstrate this back and forth of, you can't just take them off of this one side that maybe isn't super educated or might be a caricature, but here's how I'm gonna break the stereotype in this way. You can't, so that the reader can't get an easy hold on them. I think is what. Like,
and I think a lot of times you do create the context so that even a non-Spanish speaker will understand, even if they don't know what it is being said, they will get it. They'll come out of the book thinking they know Dominicanism. If you know, there's just enough context that it comes across. But I think this is, again, generational. I don't think that I knew that you didn't have to, it was corrected if it wasn't italicized. I didn't know, I didn't realize, in a way, younger writers of color, Dominican writers, you know, my Latinx writer friends, especially younger ones, you know, they always say the viejitas open the caminos. Sometimes you guys have opened it for us. Because you get ahead, and we go, wow, oh my God, look at Elizabeth, oh my God, wow. And then seriously, I get braver when I read Elizabeth. You know, no, seriously, so it's not just the viejitas went away with their machetes and carved it. And here come.
That's exactly how I pictured it, by the way. It's like in publishing houses with a machete.
And then, you know, they come and they have an easy ride. No, they're pushing it and pushing it. And sometimes they push it, and we go, Dios mío, pero Dios santo, mira. They did this. So I've learned a lot from,
I appreciate your question.
I've learned a lot from young.
I feel like it reminds me a lot of Zora, of like, you know, how their eyes were watching God and the way that was written, and in such a way that if you're an outsider, yes, there are assumptions you can make, but this wasn't for you.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Thank you for answering my question, and thank you for writing.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
¿Qué lo que?
Dime. Ya tú sabes aquí.
Tranquilo, quieto, como dice. O mi madre, queridas comadres. Well, first, I just want to say, Julia Alvarez, I learned from you because it was an assignment from school. I didn't know of any Dominican writers prior to that, and I apologize for that. But ever since then, I've been following. And then I saw Elizabeth Acevedo. I'm almost done with The Fire on High, and I hope you never doubt yourself, because you are one fabulous writer. Thank you. Yeah. So I'll keep this short. I am a poet, but I find that in this era, it is difficult to get your work out there, especially if you have a certain style. It seems like the style that has came out now is more what is minimalist. And it doesn't allow space to create that imagery or create that story that embodies everybody. So what advice would you have to new writers coming out to seek publishing or decide to self-publish? And if you do decide to self-publish, does that sabotage your career as a writer?
Oh dear, those are tricky questions. Do you?
I have a quick thing.
Yeah,
You're going to have to like jump in. But I have an early
please.
anecdote. One of my favorite rappers is Jay-Z. And he was doing an In Conversation recently, and he talked about how every time a trend would come in, right? Auto-tune, mumble, all these things. He kept so true to what his voice was, that if you look at him from his early career until now, although his flow might change a little bit, although he finds different pockets, how he puts music into the world hasn't changed too much. And I think that there's a lesson about longevity there, that there's trends, there are things that come out. I'm so highly interested in what is, I don't want to call it an Instagram poem, but what is this micro poem, if you will, that for a little bit I was like, maybe that's what I have to be doing, is like these very quick 3-second, like 3-line poems. But then in my heart I was like, that's not a poem for me, that I need more words, I need to set a setting. I'm a narrative writer. It can't just be that. And I'm gonna stick in my little corner while folks figure it out, because that's just not me. I mean, I have 100,000 followers like these folks, but I'm gonna trust the voice that's telling me this is how you tell a story. I think the question of traditional publishing versus self-publishing is a difficult one, right? That there's an idea of what people want you to write or what they think you should be writing and how you should be writing it. I don't think writers get paid enough. I think that a lot of writers that I know that are young writers are like, why would I give away however much of my income, right? But I find that I don't want to be a publisher, and I don't want to be a marketer, and I don't want to be, so I'm okay letting someone else do that work. I think it's ultimately, what are you willing to take on? And how much are you willing to do outside of the writing, right? And that the landscape is going to keep changing as we keep pushing it to change, but you got to kind of find like what is your individual approach, and then stick to that. And I tell all writers they should write a mission statement. What is your mission statement of what you're trying to do with language in the world? And then you let that be your beacon.
Thank you.
Super high. Hi, guys. Short and sweet. You guys are just influential people. That's basically it. So I also do spoken word poetry, and I'm also a playwright. And something that I touch upon a lot is mental illness within the Dominican community and how it's very hush-hush about it. So something that you guys touched upon was about single story, and how, Elizabeth, for you, that people have criticized you for being either if you're a real Dominican or not. So my question is, how do you deal with the constant criticism from your own people, and how do you not trick yourself into thinking that you're exposing your culture, but actually you're telling your own truth? Sorry.
Yeah, sometimes you feel like you're giving away family secrets, right? Like maybe this isn't for the whole world to be reading. Maybe this is for home. But I don't know how home would get it unless I put it out. And so that second piece that you mentioned of like, how do you feel like you're not just exposing, isn't one that I spend too much time with. Tell me the first part again, because I wanted the exact language of how you asked it.
The first question?
The first part, yeah.
How do you deal with the constant criticism from your own people?
I have a lot of anxiety that I struggle with and that I'm working on. And what that does, it tends to make me amplify negative voices and like not pay attention to all the voices that are actually holding my work up. And what has been helpful for me is that oftentimes when that negativity comes in, I'm looking for it. Like I'm on Goodreads trying to find a 1-star review. Like, Liz, you didn't have to do that to yourself, right? Like you did that. Like you did that. Nobody showed up at your front door, right? Like you were looking for it. And you were looking for this person. And so I think I've had to be so cognizant of, I try to write with tenderness about a community I absolutely love. And that means that I have to interrogate it. That means that I can't let it slide on certain things that I know it's struggling with because I love it, right? And I have to trust that it loves me back. And that there are so many folks who have held me up early on, right? The Dominican Writers Association, right? All of these writers online with, and also my homies, my friends who are like, who have been alongside me writing, who are like, you're doing it. You're doing it. And so I think it's been helpful for me to just think about it as volume. Who do I turn the volume up on? And who do I realize, like, maybe you're not a troll, but that is how I'm going to see you because what you're offering doesn't serve me. And so if it was helpful for you to put that out there, good for you, homie, but like, I'm okay. I'm okay.
I probably don't do half as much social media or get on there, so there are probably a lot worse things.
Good for you. I'm trying to be
I'm
in
not
your...
finding out about. But, you know, it comes down to that question, too, about if you respect your characters. Yeah. I think that was a key thing to say. If you love your community, that will get into the writing, even if you complicate the story. Sure. Because the way you really respect and love people is if you see them clearly and you love them as they are, not airbrushing them into, you know, a perfect Latino community with the beautiful family, you know, family's so important, mommy. No, it's complication. It's seeing people in their complexity. It's giving them so much more room and space and freedom. And I think you just have to stand on that love and respect, that that's where you're coming from. And yeah, I love that. I'm gonna remember that. You turn down the volume on the things that are going to take you off course from remembering that that's what's important. Because you know, I love my Dominican community, pero nosotros podemos ser bastante críticos con, she's not Dominican enough, or, y qué comparona, y ta-da-da-da, and she doesn't, you know, she didn't, it's just, you know, we do that to each other too, but part of it is, I think the respect and love, if it comes through, even if you're telling hard truths, you know?
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Don't you feel like we're therapists here? Yeah. I feel like we're therapists because so much about writing is about facing those demons and
catharsis
and the anxieties.
We write what haunts us.
Yeah. Yep.
Hi. So my aunt, ella está ahí, y me hizo like, I was gonna walk away and not ask my question, pero ella me hizo, mira muchacha. So here I am. My name is Sade Amor Mirabal. I just want to
tell me your first name.
Sade Amor Mirabal. Yeah, you got an email from me. I just want to say thank you because you actually helped me a lot to learn about my heritage, and Elizabeth, you helped me a lot to learn about my identity as an Afro-Latina. I hate speaking. This is difficult. I'm not a writer. I write when I'm like not able to speak, so yeah. But I want to kind of bring a literature or writing component to an after-school program that I lead. I lead a middle school program, so it's all girls, and I'm trying to help them have a voice, find a voice. I'm getting some backlash from my team, like they're not gonna understand it, and I'm like, I don't want them to understand me, I want them to understand themselves. So from someone that's not a teacher, not a writer, nothing, what are the first steps that you would suggest that I take to kind of get these girls into a place to find their voice, to,
Elizabeth, you talked about this already in a way, you know, about getting them to talk about not abstractions, but tell me a secret. What was that, some of the other writing prompts? They were wonderful.
Yeah, what's something your mother doesn't know? What's something
Yeah.
you know to be true? But I think it's also folks seeing different pieces of literature and realizing what's possible, right? That we don't just bring in one single thing that we think will respond to them. That I know my book is not for every kid, right? That what they really need is Angie Thomas or Jason Reynolds or Julia, right? What they really need is maybe a story that moves, that is sci-fi or fantasy or moves in a different direction, because that's what moves them.
Yeah.
And so every kid has a different entryway into literature. And we have to see them as the child that they are, not as the monolith. And so you start with, here is a piece of text, and see how many people respond to that. And who's the one kid who's like, it's all right. But like, and then you think about, okay, what does this kid want? And what is it that they're looking for? And you keep exposing them. No one knows what they want, right? Until they don't know what to search for. So you might not know what to introduce them to yet until you throw it on the wall and it sticks. Right, I think that's with writing. I don't know what's a good story idea until I get into it, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is panning out. I'm 500, 5,000, 50,000 words in. Okay, this might be a thing, right? So you just gotta let them, just keep exposing them to different stories until they find a way into, I have something to say back. And I think we're gonna have to close on that question. I have gotten the signal and I kept going because I'm a rebel.
Julia and Elizabeth are going to be in the lobby. If you didn't have a chance to ask a question, you can get a book sign, you can speak with them. But please join me in thanking them again. Thank you so much.